My name's Jason. I've played ping pong with God for years, where I'm in and I'm out, and I'm in and I'm out. And I ended up in a really deep waters, really dark place, and God wouldn't let me stay there. I grew up in a good house. I knew my parents loved me. It was a really good family environment, but as far as I can remember, I was an angry kid, and I don't 100% know why. I was kind of loud, outspoken, pretty bold. Third grade, I had a teacher take me out in the hallway, stick their finger in my face, and you're never gonna amount to anything. You're gonna grow up and smash out windows in the town drugstore. At about 14 or 15, I started kind of trying to figure out who my peoples were. Got interested in guitar when I was 14, really got into music, and that became kind of my escape, I think, and where I found my value. And I found I was pretty good at it, started having bands. You know, I've got a group of people now that are anti-authoritarian, that can't stand the jocks, and are all depressed and angry in some capacity, right? And so it was like, oh, great, this is my people. And so now I'm in an environment where I'm elevating that. My parents knew something was up, and they got more involved in church. I joined a youth group there, and that was probably one of the first times in that period, my teens, to where I felt acceptance from a diverse group of people. That season, I think, planted a seed that later on helped draw me back to him. At different times in my life, I went through kind of like an identity crisis, I think. I went from rock star musician, I married my wife real young, and decided I'm gonna be a businessman because I need to be successful. And got a haircut, put the guitars in the closet, and completely changed my identity overnight. In my late 30s, I had a series of business failures that hit, and I was in a deep depression, started drinking heavily, and I was seeing how that anger was affecting my family. I hated it, and I found out that when I isolated and got drunk instead, well, I wasn't yelling at my family anymore, and it became my medicine. And it obviously got to a point where I had no control over it. In the midst of this time of me being kind of checked out, there's this preacher from Cleveland that I've heard is on audio before, on the radio, and he just popped in my head. And I'm driving in silence, and that popped in my head, and I was like, you know what? I want to see what that's about. And I looked up podcasts, played the first one of it, and it spoke directly to me in that moment. It was wild. I honestly believe it was God just reaching out and going, hey, wake up, dude. And that started a process. It wasn't an overnight thing, because I'm still an alcoholic. I'm still having all these issues, but I'm being called. God was doing his thing in spite of where I was. The next big clincher in the story is my wife writes me a letter. She put down her foot where she was like, I am done. She barely spoke to me for, I felt like 2 months. And she's like, I'm going to write my thoughts down. And there was a lot of hard truth in that letter. It got that process started. My stubbornness finally let down. Hopped online, found out about, CR, came that very Friday. So now I'm walking into Celebrate Recovery, and I'm in my sweats. I'm totally like, I can't believe I'm doing this. First 3 steps we summarize this way in Celebrate Recovery. It's I can't, he can, I'm gonna let him. That really comes down to Romans 12:2, is being transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do not be conformed to this world. And that happens when you let go of it. When you say, I can't do this, I'm gonna let him, that's when the renewing happens. And for me, there was a big jump, and then there's a growth curve, right? And the big jump was, to me, the miracle healing that he gave me to get me to a place to where now you can deal with life. Now you can stop damaging your relationships, not only with the people that are important around you, but with me, God says. And it's a process. I mean, I certainly don't do this perfectly by any means. I've had relapses. I've had times in both my anger and with alcohol. I still struggle, but what keeps you moving, or what keeps me moving, I should say, is community, reading, letting the word speak to you, letting it into your brain, and quiet time with God. That is huge for me. I can't do this without Him. And I don't mean just recovery, I mean life. I can't do life without Him.